Number one, or Rob Bell or his handlers lay down any ground rules in advance for the interview in terms of this question is off limits or in that regard?
Absolutely not. In fact, I can say this with some confidence, that people who generally take that view don't come on and be interviewed by me. Their handlers won't allow it to happen. I read a tweet somewhere by somebody called Joel Osteen, whose only statement was disastrous PR as a consequence of that interview.
Yeah, I think the interview hurt him. I really do. Not that you hurt him. I think Rob Bell hurt himself by not being prepared. I think that he thought he was going to sit for a secular interviewer who knew nothing about Christianity and the history of the church and the history of Christianity, and I think that he was totally taken off guard. Which brings me back to my original question to you, given what you've already stated about your personal theological views having absolutely no relevance whatsoever to the interview, and I understand that completely. But on blogs, as we've mentioned frequently during this 30-minute conversation, Martin, on blogs, people are saying, "Oh, well, Martin Bashir, he attends Tim Keller's church, New York's Redeemer Presbyterian. This is why he was so hard on Rob Bell." Can you set the record straight on that?
Look, my personal faith for the purpose of that interview was entirely irrelevant, because whenever I do an interview, I try my very best to understand the issues at stake. I interviewed Michelle Rhee, the former head of the Washington, D.C. Schools District, yesterday on the show. And she was very unhappy with the way she was interviewed, because I asked her some difficult questions about the issue of education. So I want to assert that I didn't do anything other than what I would expect of myself. However, I do attend Redeemer Presbyterian Church. I am married to a wonderful Christian woman, and I am myself a committed Christian. But that does not have a bearing on what I was doing. And I would hate for people to think that because of that, I'm therefore aligned with a particular denominational attack on Rob Bell. And that's why I'm reluctant to discuss my personal faith. It had nothing to do with my personal attendance of any denominational church or body. It was everything to do with the fact that when I read the book and I saw what I believe are is an egregious disregard for history and a treatment of biblical text in the most selective and perfunctory manner, that was what drove my interview with Rob Bell. It has nothing to do with what church I attend. And indeed, I do know people who have been very helped and enjoy attending emergent churches. My daughter Phoebe, who's at university in the UK, is being baptized on Sunday, and she attends an emergent church in England called the Edge Church. It's not the sort of church that I would attend personally, but it's where she goes. And we are absolutely delighted that she's a member of a congregation and she's prepared to be baptized by full immersion on Sunday. But what I did in that interview was what I believe is central to the journalistic task, and that is, what is the truth here? What is the truth? That's what we should be pursuing. And that's what I tried to do in that interview. And I accept that it was uncomfortable and may have been, on occasions, slightly antagonistic and adversarial. But all I was trying to do, and I hope your audience will forgive me if they were offended in any way, all I was trying to do was get to what this man really believes about this life and the life to come.
Well, I know my audience pretty well, Martin. I don't think an apology is necessary to this audience. I'll tell you, for what it's worth, when I finished watching your interview with Rob Bell, my first question was not, I wonder what church Martin Bashir attends. My first reaction was, finally, an interviewer on mainstream television who is getting to the heart of the issue. Whether or not you were a Christian was not a concern to me. What your political background was not a concern to me. What I saw was someone whose career I have followed since you were on Nightline, and I was pleasantly surprised to see an interview with journalistic integrity take on the very serious nature of these questions and do it in a way that is not at all offensive. The people on the blogs who are offended by the questions that you asked Rob Bell, the people who are offended because you rephrased the same question 3 times, are the people who want to answer the question in the same vague obfuscation that Rob Bell answered with. So, for what it's worth, I never made a conclusion or attempted to make a conclusion about where you were coming from theologically. I was just pleased to see a journalist do his job.
There was an interview with Tiger Woods this morning on Good Morning America, and I didn't see the interview, but I was talking to a colleague who described it as the worst absolution of journalistic responsibilities that they'd ever seen. This is a man who, over the course of his career, raised millions of dollars in income off the back of his genius as a golfer and his perfect family life. The interviewer asked 4 questions, none of which touched on any of the issues of matter. Not a single question. And I watched the interview that was conducted with Rob Bell on Good Morning America on the same day as I interviewed him. And again, 3 questions were asked. And the thing is, when you think about these issues, for the secular journalist, it's often not really of that much importance. It's quite nice to laugh at the Christian church having rows about the afterlife, heaven and hell, whether these things matter, the purpose of living in this life. Many journalists look at that and say, whatever. They can say what they like. I was trying to bring some basic journalistic practices to these issues because I think that, I happen to believe, that if we can't scrutinize matters of faith, issues of life, then I'm not sure what we can. I mean, if we're going to examine a meltdown on Wall Street or the government's handling of the budget crisis, are we not going to treat people who purport to be holding out the purpose of life to us? Are we not going to treat them with a similar level of disciplined scrutiny? I find it very, very depressing that happens. But I'm relieved that you don't feel that. And as I say, I am entirely open to apologizing to anybody who felt that my behavior was discourteous or rude. It was never intended as such. I was only wanting to get to the essence of Rob Bell's position. And I was asking questions in repetition because I was not satisfied that the audience was being given an answer that was either coherent or basically understandable.
Oh, absolutely. I was shouting at the computer screen saying, Rob, just answer the question. I mean, it's a yes or no answer, and there was no yes or no. It was yes, and then giving an answer that ended up being no, or no, and then giving an answer that ended up being yes. And so I think that the ire that you've raised is among the emergent crowd who saw their Goliath come down in a very unexpected way. Their champion was not at all prepared to answer the questions and not be self-incriminating, and he chose to obfuscate. And I didn't see anything, and I don't say this just because I'm talking to you. I say this because I've been in radio 8 years. I've conducted interviews myself. Certainly not. I am not anywhere near the caliber of an interviewer that you are. But I want to say to you, I did not come away from that interview from a professional perspective feeling that you had badgered Rob Bell or in any way done anything offensive. You got to the heart of the truth, and the interview spoke for itself. Rob Bell spoke for himself, and if Rob Bell has been hurt by this interview, Rob Bell hurt himself, not the interviewer.
Well, thank you for that kind reassurance. As I say, there are some who you can never please, but I was only trying to do my job. It's been a great thrill to talk to you. Thank you for the opportunity.
It has been my pleasure to speak to you, and I look forward to hopefully having an opportunity to speak again.
Thank you again, sir.